Summarizing literary text. Now, earlier in the year, we did focus on summarizing informational or nonfiction text, and today we're going to switch back to fiction or literature. So sometimes as readers, we are asked to summarize a text, which we know means that we're going to briefly retell the story details and events using our own words. And we might think to ourselves, why do we do this? Or what's the purpose for summarizing a text? Well, if you really pay attention to some of the most important events and those details in a story or in a play to help you then summarize, guess what? You're going to better understand what you have read. And after all, reading is thinking. If we're not thinking while we're reading, then we're really not reading. So let's jump in and see how good readers summarize a literary text. So a good summary only includes those really important story details. It might mention the main characters or the setting, and it might also describe the plot or the story events, including the problem that your characters are faced with and the solution. So we have a very short text right here titled "A Jacket in the Boot." Kind of strange. But let's look at this text together. Right now we're working on a split screen. So over here to the right, you can see the graphic organizer that Mrs. Body is going to complete. So after I read, I'm going to identify who the main characters were, what is the setting of this story, what problem were our characters faced with, what were some of the major events, and then how was that problem solved? After that, you can see right down here, we are going to complete a summary. So we are going to think about some of those important details that we include here in order to summarize our story in maybe 2 or 3 sentences. So let's get started. This is "A Jacket in the Boot." When we visited my parents' friends in England, their son James and I became fast friends. One afternoon, he and I decided to go to the park. It was cool outside, so James was looking for his jacket. Then he said, "Oh, I think I left it in the boot." I looked at him puzzled. Why would he leave his jacket in a boot? Okay, so I'm going to pause on my reading for a moment because I like to stop after I read a paragraph and kind of think about what I've read. And so far I know who the main characters are, right? It's an American boy, and his name is, they really haven't told us yet, have they? Then we also have James, and he's from England, right? So he's an English boy. The setting, we know, whoops, let me go down one line. All right, we're visiting my parents' friends in England. So they are actually in England. And we also learned that it's a cool afternoon, right? They're going to the park. So in England, at a park, on a cool afternoon. Now, you might be wondering, well, why is this part important, the cool afternoon part? Well, that kind of leads into the problem, right? It's cool outside. I remember that James is going to look for his jacket, and then he makes this statement, "Oh, I think I left it in the boot." I looked at him puzzled. Why would he leave his jacket in a boot? So the problem might be the boys are at a park, and James realizes that he left his jacket in a boot. Part of the problem too is that this confuses his friend. He doesn't understand. What does he mean by boot? Well, let's continue reading. James started laughing. Then he told me that in England, the trunk of a car is a boot. We had taken a drive in the countryside earlier. Because it had been warmer then, he had left his jacket in the trunk instead of wearing it. So now let's talk about some of these main events here that happened. Well, we know that in the beginning, the American boy, oops, not bot, boy, visits his friend James in England. Next, we know they go to the park. The next major event, James looks for his jacket and says he left it in the boot. Still kind of funny to me. Now, his American friend is puzzled about what James means. So, really, the problem here is that his friend is a little confused, right? And that he doesn't have his jacket. The solution is that James remembers that he left his jacket in the car trunk and explains to his friend that trunk in England is boot. I know, seems kind of silly, but hey, can we summarize it? We have to take some of the information we've learned here, some of the really important details, to help us summarize in just 2 to 3 sentences. So what could we write as a summary? Well, I might say something like, an English boy named James is at the park, with his friend and realizes he left his jacket in the boot. The American boy is confused and asks James what he means. Let's say after James explains that in England the boot is a trunk of a car, his friend laughs. All right, so we've managed to include the main characters, a little bit about the problem, and the solution. Today, you guys have a short text you're going to read. It is titled The Mix-Up. It is located in today's folder for reading. You have the same exact graphic organizer. Yours will be blank with the title The Mix-Up right up here. As you read, you're going to do just what we've done in this video, and you're going to complete the graphic organizer and then think about some of the major details, including the characters, the problem they're faced with, and the solution, to then write a summary that's about 2 to 3 sentences long. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and we will go over this tomorrow.